After many years of trying a whole lot of different diet options, this is where I finally landed and why it's worked so well for me. After all the health videos that I've been posting, one question I get asked probably the most is, what are you doing currently for your eating plan and regimen? And so this is the video I finally got time to make, showing what I eat and the science behind every decision I make and what goes into my body. Sure, in college I could eat like a horse, drink like a fish, and I still graduated at about 185 pounds and 6% body fat. However, reality catches up, and eventually you realize that your metabolism isn't what it used to be, and your lifestyle isn't quite as active as maybe as it was. And so I've had to adjust my nutrition a lot over the years. I've tried low carb, I've tried keto, I've tried cheat meals, cheat days or weekends, I've tried carb cycling, pretty much about everything in my time trying to stay lean. So after all those years of learnings, this is what I'm doing today. Each item, the reasoning behind it. As I said in the recent video on the baseline calorie calculations, every diet consists of three things: what to eat, when to eat, and how much to eat. First, what foods do you eat? What you put into your body is very important. Especially if you're on limited calories, that means you have less bandwidth to get everything in that you need for vitamins and minerals and all that stuff. So if you're filling your calorie count with junk food, you're not getting the things your body needs. Because of the heart situation, I stopped drinking and caffeine over 2 years ago now. I try to avoid sugars. That's one of the main things other than alcohol that you can avoid. The next thing would be grains I also avoid, which means things like breads, pastas, and even rice I try to avoid. Now, most of you don't have to be as strict as me, thank goodness for you, but that doesn't mean that you won't get the best results by following the same basic things I do. Still avoiding sugars, desserts, all those things. Better yet, avoiding pastas and breads is only going to get you results faster. And if you do want to deviate from that, instead of doing it every day or here and there, make it deliberate and controlled. For example, I will be very strict here, but I'll recognize that, hey, I've got friends from out of town coming in, and I know that we may go to dinner. And at that dinner, we go to a nice restaurant, and I will let myself have a good dessert that I'm not used to having, but it's that one-time treat, and then the next day I'm back on track. So you keep things like dessert an exception, but not the norm. I also follow a wolf diet, and I have another video on the channel where I explain it in more detail, but in general, wolf diet means that I'm eating meats, eggs, cheese, animal products like honey is actually an animal product, so I allow that. Blueberries and pineapple, olives, avocado for the different kind of fruits. I do not eat vegetables. The only ones I really eat for a vegetable are potatoes or carrots because they're roots, so that's a little bit better. And that goes down the line of avoiding inflammation, as you'll see in the wolf diet video. As much as I do enjoy going out to eat, and because I don't really drink anymore, I want to go out and socialize, so usually it's food, but I also know that when I'm out at a restaurant, I have less control over what I'm putting into my body, which means they're going to use extra sugars or sweets, salts, whatever, anything that can throw my diet off from my normal plan. Even at home here, I try to really avoid processed foods. I try to buy whatever it is fresh, cook it myself. The most processed thing I probably have in this house is protein powder, which I'll use once in a while, and that's fine, but that's about the only thing that I don't really see what's going into it. As far as when to eat, the primary thing I try to do is focus my eating around my workouts. So let's say that I am gonna go lift weights. I'm gonna try to have one of my bigger meals a couple hours before it and a couple hours after it. That way I'm maximizing my energy and protein in my blood before I go into the workout, letting myself have the best workout, and then taking advantage of that post-workout period to get the carbs and protein in there for energy and for recovery. And that's going to be the maximum beneficial eating plan for my particular lifestyle. I'll also try to eat later in the day, ideally a couple hours before bed. Now this is where the what, the when, and the how much to eat start to blend together a little bit. Regardless of what you're doing for exercise, and I will cover my exercise routine in the next video, but whatever you're doing, keep doing it. So this is going to be an 8-day repeating cycle for the eating habits. Your exercise routine may be a 7-day, a 5-day, once a week, whatever it is. Don't change that. Don't try to adjust your eating to the heavier day. So I'm going to do a heavier carb day on the days that I lift more or anything like that. Otherwise, you kind of defeat the purpose of varying your eating through the cycle. The first step is to establish your baseline calorie requirements, or BCR, which we covered in the last video, link below. So you've got your BCR, and for me, it was about 2,600 calories in the last video, so I'll put that there. On days 1 through 5, I'm gonna have a 200 calorie deficit, which means 2,600 minus 200 makes 2,400 calories per day. And on day 6 through 8, I'm gonna have a 900 calorie deficit, which means I'm gonna be at about 1,700 calories as a target, but I'm okay going up to 1,900 on those days. On days 1 through 5, we also want higher fats and lower carbs. And on days 6 through 8, we want higher carbs and lower fats. The original plan I was looking at actually recommended almost a keto-like diet for days 1 through 5. However, if you watched my video on the testosterone levels, I found that a keto diet after how many years was starting to cause issues with electrolyte imbalance. And when I started eating healthy carbs again and got out of keto, my testosterone went up 39%. So the most important thing of any health regimen is to not just look good, but feel good. So that's why I've gone away from keto and I'm on this healthy, balanced diet. That said, again, I am trying to have higher fats and lower carbs on days 1 through 5. And with any kind of a change in diet like this, obviously keep up with your blood tests, make sure that your cholesterol, your triglycerides, all the different numbers are still where they need to be. Any carbs I do eat on either day are not going to be naked carbs. In other words, no carbs by themselves. I'm not gonna sit and just eat a bowl of fruit. I'm gonna make sure that I have a balance of the protein, fats, and carbs with each sitting meal. And the carbs I do have on these days, I tend to focus before and after the workouts, as I mentioned earlier. Then there'll be a little bit less carbs, but still the protein and fats at that meal closer to bed to make sure that the nutrients are in my system to help repair the muscles overnight as I sleep. This 900 calorie deficit sounds like a lot, even if it's only the 700, but as you eat healthy and you eat the right things, you're going to be okay. What I did notice is that the higher carbs seem to be providing a little bit more satiation to not be as hungry. So it's kind of strange when you start doing keto and you're eating almost just meats, you seem to lose that hunger until the point where it flips a switch and then you're starving. But for this, the higher carbs do help keep you content. And the main thing is just be listening to your body. By varying both the calorie intake and the carb versus fat type ratios on these 2 days, that helps us also avoid metabolic adaptation, where your body just gets used to a certain thing and it's always working in that mode. It may change its behavior. So this is the point of keeping that variance. That's why I said follow the eating plan, 8-day cycle, regardless of what your workout cycle is. And again, I'm trying to focus the bulk of the meals before and after my weight workout with that smaller meal before bed. As far as an occasional cheat meal, we know they're gonna happen. If you have the option, I suggest you do it on day 5 cheat. The reason for that is on days 1 through 5, you're eating a little bit more. Day 5, let's say you have a meal, ideally it's earlier in the day, like a breakfast or lunch and not dinner, but whatever you do, day 5, your calories are way high, let's say, but that provides even more of a delta from day 5 to going to day 6 where you're dropping those calories. So then if you gorge that meal, you've got 3 days to really trim the calories back, as opposed to wasting one of these days on a cheat meal and throwing it off, because those are really supposed to be where you see that leaning out. You may also find on these days with the lower calories, you may take in the 1700 calories or whatever just before and after a workout. So sometimes what I'll do is I will eat all the calories around the workout, and then I'll just starve out the rest of the day until breakfast the next morning. So I have kind of an intermittent fasting there as well. That's another thing you can inject into your plan and see how that works for you. Now, you've probably figured it out by now that to do this plan, you are going to have to count your calories. As I said in the last video, I use the Samsung app on my phone because it's set up to talk to the phone, the watch, and everything together. And that's what works for me. You can do it manually, but there's so many apps out there. It's going to be probably easier to use your phone and let it tell you. You especially need to do it religiously in the beginning, checking your calories and checking your weight. Because if you're not losing weight, if that's your goal, if you're not losing weight, then you know something's not quite right. So that may tell you that maybe you did the math wrong on your baseline calorie calculations. Maybe you didn't realize that you aren't putting as much energy into your workouts, or that you're skipping more often. Maybe you don't realize that that steak is actually 16 ounces instead of 10 ounces. Who knows? But in the beginning especially, make sure you're keeping track of this stuff and that it's working for you. If it's not, find your new baseline and recalculate. The more consistent you can be with the program, the easier it'll be to eventually, if you want, start sloughing off on counting calories if you kind of get in a routine where you say, well, my normal routine is I eat, eggs and sausage for breakfast, and I eat this for lunch, and I eat this for dinner. And if you know that's always falling into your calories, you don't necessarily need to track that exact same thing every day. And maybe you say, yes, once every couple of weeks, I'm gonna have a cheat meal, and that's okay because I'm gonna get back on track. This is what I normally eat on days 1 through 5. The first thing I have in the morning is a morning drink, which includes a pre and probiotic, some BCAAs, which also have electrolytes, half a scoop of collagen protein, heavy whipping cream, and a little lemon juice. That's just enough to either get me started, take the dog for a walk. A lot of mornings I will go swim. So any kind of morning cardio, you're better to do on not a completely empty stomach. Get a little bit of protein and a little bit of nutrients in you, like what this is. And that way at least your muscles have something to pull off of, but they don't have this huge abundance of blood sugar being forced a little bit to start using your fat stores for energy. For breakfast, I'll have a couple eggs, some crumble sausage, just a little salsa on it. I'll have a cup of blueberries, a little cream, ground cinnamon, just cinnamon, not mixed with sugar, some crushed pecans or walnuts, and honey. And yes, the carbs are being focused, as I said earlier in the day. That gives me energy to start the day, as well as prepare for the weights workout in a couple hours after that. Once I get back from lifting weights later, usually if that's in the lunchtime range, let's say, then I'll have whatever lunch is. And on these days, I usually have some kind of red meat. So it could be steak, some kind of ground beef, maybe pork. Even though pork's a little leaner, that's okay. But I'll have something with that. And then for the carbs, generally what I'll have is maybe some pineapple. Maybe I'll dress it the same way I do my blueberries in the morning with the pecans and honey in that. I may have some olives, maybe some avocado. And then for the later meal in the day, this is generally something maybe similar to what I had at lunch. Maybe it's some jalapeno beef sausage or something. Maybe it's tuna with mayonnaise and avocado if I feel like it needs to be a little bit leaner because I just don't want something so heavy that late in the day. On those days, if I feel like I need a snack, I tend to look for something a little fattier for snacks, such as summer sausage and a few slices of cheese. And then that'll be it for those days. Whatever that last meal is where it's important to make sure that you're looking at your calories and you get where it needs to be. Now for days 6 through 8, it's a little bit different. My first drink in the morning is going to be exactly the same, whether I'm going to do cardio or not. My breakfast is similar. I still have the 2 eggs. However, instead of the fatty sausage, I'll have a lean breakfast ham slice. The berries and all that are the same as well. After the gym, when it's time for lunch, now I'm more likely to have something a little bit leaner. So maybe it's going to be a lean cut of pork. Maybe it's going to be salmon or some other kind of fish, shrimp perhaps. And for the carb, instead of the pineapple, on these days I'll let myself have either a baked potato that's loaded, but I will try to go easy on the butter and sour cream because I want to minimize the fats on those days. I may have a sweet potato instead of a white potato, which is probably better for me, to be honest. And then butter with crushed pecans and honey. And then later in the day, I may have the same kind of tuna, mayo, and avocado with maybe some cayenne pepper on it for flavor. Maybe a can of sardines, maybe some other kind of fish. Something light, to say the least, because I have a lot less calories I get to eat on those days. If I feel like I need a snack on days 6 through 8, instead of something fatty like the summer sausage and cheese, I tend to lean towards a spoon of peanut butter with honey because those are a little bit sweeter, a little bit more carbs, and that's okay on those days. Just be careful because things like a spoon of peanut butter have a lot more calories and carbs than what you realize. And this is where label reading makes a lot of sense because one thing of peanut butter can literally have over double the carbs of what another one may have. Using this exact program last year while I was trying to lose weight for the Texas Mile, I lost 25 pounds in about 6 months with it. Now before you say, I know so-and-so and they lost 30 pounds in 3 months, sure they did, that's fine. But for one thing, I didn't have a ton of extra weight to lose. I was already fairly decent shape once I started this exercise. Another thing to consider is that this is not some crash diet that I'm going to hate myself for trying. I'm doing this continually, so I didn't do it, lose the weight, and then go off the rails. Now, yes, once the Texas Mile was over, my discipline level went south a little bit, but I still tried to stay as close to on track as I could to minimize the damage or added weight that I gained. And then as I eventually got back on track, it's very easy to continue going. So again, you want to establish an eating lifestyle, not just a crash diet. Now, more recently, as I started getting more serious into it, I went back on this fairly strict and I was able to lose 9 pounds in 1 month. Still pretty decent. And I know that I'm not going to lose 9 pounds the next month, and that's fine. But even within that month, I did have slips where I went up and over calories a couple times. And that's okay because overall I was still sticking as close to the plan as I could, and the more consistent you can do it, the better off your results are going to be. One of the biggest skills to develop is listening to your body. If you're at the end of the day and you say, well, I should be able to eat 300 more calories and you're just really not hungry, nobody's forcing you to eat that. In fact, the more you can adjust your body to eat when it is hungry versus forcing it or saying, well, it's lunchtime, I guess I have to go eat something. Just listen to your body. That's the way it's supposed to work. And the more you can do that, the easier this will be as well. The one thing that I still struggle to figure out from a technical standpoint is most days, if I eat less or fast that second half of the day, I will lose weight overnight. But if I go out and eat a big dinner a little bit late in the day, I will gain weight overnight. Makes total sense. What doesn't make as much sense is on the days when I do eat that big meal towards the end of the day, and maybe I had bigger workouts that day or something, but still I was over on my calories and I somehow lose weight overnight. And other days where I seem to fast and I'll actually gain weight overnight. There's an element to this timing of your body. What I believe is happening is if you don't eat, perhaps your metabolism slows down enough that you're not burning it as quick, and that's why you gain the weight overnight versus if you eat that food before bed, maybe that food now is used to repair the muscles, which burns up calories around it in fat stores and helps you lose the weight overnight, make you leaner. There's something very obscure about that entire component to this that I'm still working on trying to figure out. As we age, we painfully have to accept that bodies are made in the kitchen, not the gym. That's an old saying, and yes, it's very true. Now that you have the food aspect of what I've been doing, I will, in the next video, go through what my workout routine is to see if there's anything you can take away and learn from that. I'm not going to sit here and say that I'm ready for the Mr. Olympia stage, but at 50 years old and 215 pounds in this shape, I'm pretty happy with where I am today as a good foundation in my continued journey to becoming the best version of myself possible. If you haven't done so, please use those muscles and click the link below to subscribe. Hit the little bell for notifications. Check out the YCC merch store, see if there's anything you like. And let's live for today.